We have our second shocking NBA head coach firing in as many weeks. The Nuggets have fired head coach Mike Malone and dispatched general manager Calvin Booth. I have Matt Moore of Locked On Nuggets and Haize of Locked On Bulls here to help me make sense of it all right now on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets. With me are Matt Moore of Locked On Nuggets and Haize of Locked On Bulls. We'll dispense with the pleasantries because this is the second episode we've recorded today, and we usually call Matt Moore the man of 1,000 podcasts, and he is definitely living up to that reputation. This is a breaking news edition. The Nuggets have fired head coach Mike Malone, and they've also fired general manager Calvin Booth. Matt, we'll start with you. How surprised are you that this has happened? How surprised are you that this has happened now?
Surprised, not shocked, is what I've said, and I'll stick to that. Okay, so the team's been spiraling, obviously. Losers of 4 in a row, first time since 2023. What happened in 20? Oh, that's right, they won the title. But first time that they've lost 4 in a row since then. Team's been spiraling. Joker's been frustrated. The players were as frustrated this week as I've ever seen them. Aaron Gordon in particular has been extremely frustrated in the locker room, in huddles, etc. There are disagreements with the coaching staff, not necessarily Malone, but there were problems with scheme-related issues with the Nuggets, and there has been a brewing and consistently growing sense of dissatisfaction and honestly a pretty toxic work environment in Denver. Now, that's not to say that there's anything like I'm not alluding to harassment or anything, but there's been power plays. There's been friction between the front office and coaching for 2 years since Calvin Booth took over. It has grown steadily and forced fractures amongst people where you're either a Booth guy or a Malone guy. And today, Josh Kroenke decided to go ahead and get a head start, cleaned house on both of them, hoping that David Adelman can create a spark with Jokic being the best in the world right now. At least they get to evaluate David Adelman as head coach to see what his candidacy is for head coach next year, along with, I'm sure, a wide range of candidates. And they'll see if they can pull off a rabbit out of a hat, maybe pull this ship out of the gutter with a new voice in David Adelman. I'm skeptical, but overall, I'm not shocked that this decision was made. If you're going to do it, why not now? Why wait until what you feel is a first round exit that's inevitable? But the reality is, Haize, I know, don't get choked up, buddy. It's okay. The reality is that Michael Malone, Mike Budenholzer won a title in 2021. He got fired in 2023. Michael Malone won a title in 2023. He got fired in 2025. This is just a reality for coaching. I think it sucks, but this is where we're at with head coaches in the NBA right now.
I mean, it's a what have you done for me lately business, right? Like Mike Malone, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, 8 straight winning seasons in Denver, right? Something like that. So, what you've done is only as good as where you're going. And so if the Denver Nuggets know that they're going to make a strong pivot, like Mike Malone has been closely tied to players like Jamal Murray. And what did I say earlier? Like, as long as those guys are there, like I had a level of confidence in the team. But I think if you know that you're going to clean house, why not do whatever? Look, you want a complete reevaluation of the team. That's the GM. That is the head coach. That's everything. And so now looking at the Nuggets, they're a team, that could be making several big pivots this offseason to try to build something more sustainable around Nikola Jokic, maybe have a better defense around him as well. So it's especially from the outside looking in, as somebody who likes the Nuggets but doesn't follow them every single day. Like, it does seem crazy to fire a coach that's as good as Mike Malone and what he's been, but sometimes the voice of a coach you need to change it. We've seen it. Sometimes coaches run their course without necessarily needing to come via a losing season or anything like that. And that's where it seems like the Nuggets are right now.
Yeah, so it was 8 straight winning seasons. Was losing seasons for the first 2 seasons under Mike Malone, and they've made the playoffs for the last 6 seasons, due for a 7th, and of course they won the finals in 2022-23.
They've gone over their preseason win total every year until this one. They have literally beat expectations every season except this one. They tied the franchise record in wins last year. I wrote this about Taylor Jenkins, and this is how I feel, Doug. At some point, I get process. I do. And I've been in that building. I know how frustrated and unhappy Joker's been. I know how flawed this roster is. I know how garbage. I can tell you in agonizing detail all the problems with this Denver Nuggets defense and why they were going home in the first round. But like, Doug, at some level, doesn't just winning the games and the results have to matter enough to keep your job?
And obviously, it seems like, as you pointed to, this was a vibes kind of move. So,
yes.
I guess my question is, like, how did it get so bad? You're only 2 seasons removed from winning an NBA Finals, and I want to ask about this later. But we've seen a similar story in Milwaukee with Mike Budenholzer. How did it get so bad so quickly with Mike Malone and Booth, or Mike Malone and the owner, or Mike Malone and players? Where are the vibes bad, and how did they get there so quickly?
Tim Connelly was the he was the Malone whisperer. He was the guy that was able to navigate all of Malone's hot-headed tendencies and stubbornness. And when Malone was like, this is garbage, you got to get me this kind of guy, Tim was able to be like, all right, no problem. Like, you're right. Let's do this. Oh, I've got a young guy that I want you to play. I also got you this veteran. Look at this veteran that I got you. Oh, you think we need more rim protection? Look at this guy that I found for you. Calvin Booth was my way or the highway. I believe in these young guys. We're going to draft and we're going to go young. It's 2 timelines like Golden State. The counter is that the Milwaukee Bucks did the opposite. They did win now, win now, win now, win now, win now. We're going to we need veterans. We need guys that know how to play. Wes Matthews, Jay Crowder. Like, that was the mistake consistently over and over again by going the veterans route. The CBA under this new CBA makes it to where you have less flexibility than ever. And Calvin Booth under the previous CBA locked in to these guys, multi-year deals for Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson. You needed those roster spots. Like, you needed them to bring in a guy like Justin Holiday, to bring in a guy like Dennis Smith Jr., to bring in a guy like all these type of guys that you really honestly needed. Lonnie Walker, to be able to bring in somebody who was a veteran who could give you the shooting and defensive help that you needed, just one more guy. They lost Bruce Brown because they couldn't retain him. They couldn't afford it. Everyone's like, well, they're cheap. No. The CBA said they could only offer him a little over $7 million. He got 20 from the Pacers. What did you think was going to happen there? That wasn't their fault. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, they banked on Christian Brown, and that was a decision that came from ownership that management and coaching agreed on. That's the only thing I think that those the 3 sides agreed on was Christian Brown's our guy. But in doing so, you lose KCP's ability to call out defensive coverages, to hold guys accountable, to build the defense up in non-box score ways. It doesn't matter how many steals Jokic has. The defense is garbage. And so that loss really contributed to this. And it's just been a spiral. It starts with the front office. Calvin Booth didn't have an extension and was upset about it, was offered an extension, turned it down, wasn't enough money. So he was entering a lame duck year anyway. And the tension between him and Malone continued. Jalen Pickett not playing enough. So Malone closes with Jalen Pickett. He has a brutal turnover versus the Pacers, which I don't blame Jalen for. This is a tough spot for a second-round rookie in his second year to be doing in a pivotal game to get them out of it. Everybody was set up to fail by the egos clashing and the overall culture this season, in a season where the story has been how amazing Nikola Jokic has been. And that was a big part of this decision, Doug, is Jokic has been so amazing that they were unwilling to sit by and just let it go because they want to express how urgent the situation is to Jokic and around Jokic.
All right, I want to go to the Jokic angle coming up, but really quickly, Haize, if the Denver Nuggets had won 4 games in a row coming into this game against the Kings tomorrow night, is Mike Malone still coach? If they beat the Timberwolves, which was a big game for both teams, is Mike Malone still the coach?
No, this seems like this is a change of direction that would have happened one way. Maybe he's still the coach for now, but it seems like this was a change of direction that was coming by season's end regardless.
All right, coming up, I want to get to the Jokic angle. Was he consulted? Is this the first step to transitioning to a post-Jokic future for the Nuggets, or is it more about keeping Jokic satisfied in Denver? I'll ask Matt and Haize that coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Matt, what is Nikola Jokic's role in all of this? Do you believe that he was consulted over this kind of decision, specifically the Mike Malone firing, or was this something that you feel like ownership was just going to do regardless of Nikola's opinion on his head coach?
Sources close to the situation, #sauces, have told me that Nikola Jokic did not ask for this. He did not call for this. There was no meeting prior to this morning between Nikola Jokic and Nuggets ownership prior to the decision already having been made. Jokic's frustration was a component in this decision from ownership's perspective, is that Jokic's outward frustration and unhappiness this season contributed to the decision to clean house. So I would tell you that he did not want this to happen. He is always he is going to have nothing but glowing things to say about Michael Malone and how much he's meant to him in his career. Michael Malone gave him the opportunity and believed in him. I said this on Locked On Nuggets. There are a lot of coaches, and some coaches that you listening would think are great coaches who would not have given Nikola Jokic a chance. They would have passed on him because of his physique, his physicality, and his play style when he was a rookie and a young player. Michael Malone instead gave him an opportunity, saw what was possible with him, and then continued to give him more opportunities to grow and become better until he became an MVP. And since that time has done nothing but credit Jokic first, second, and third for all of the Nuggets' success. If you ask Michael Malone why they're successful, he does not take credit for it. He points to Nikola Jokic immediately and then to Jamal Murray. I do believe that Jokic is not, how can I put this? Jokic is a guy that's going to be like, this happens. This is the business of basketball. It's unfortunate. I wish it didn't have to happen, but this is what happens. It wasn't my call, but this is their decision. Ownership decided to make that decision, and they get to make that decision. That's what I think is going to be his reaction to this. He won't protest the decision. I don't think that personally he is. I don't think that this increases the chances of a trade demand or any of the other nonsense comments I got over at Locked On Nuggets from Lakers fans, but I do think that he is not livid with the front office for making this decision.
I believe both Jokic and Doncic, they're both available starting in 2027, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Fired up.
I'm interested in Jokic's relationship with the guy that will be taking over, at least temporarily, David Adelman. We'll get to that in a moment. But Haize, how big of a risk is this if you are Kroenke and you make this big decision and sort of reading tea leaves a little bit on the mood of Jokic and the rest of the players, and the risk being, what happens if you lose? What if all of those feelings that Jokic was describing there from Matt Moore, what if all of those feelings suddenly shift?
This is a big risk, and I think bigger than people realize. Coaching matters, and coaching matters a lot, and you have to have the right mix of players that respond to the coach and a coach that understands how to get the best out of those players, right? And so Mike Malone is a player that is a coach that believed in Jokic. He believed in Jamal Murray. And so, I know there are going to be some changes, some major changes probably with the roster, especially after moves like this, but you better be sure the coach that you get is going to be able to respond to those guys and especially have a relationship with Nikola Jokic. And that's not to say he's going to be unprofessional. He's going to come in here. He's going to do his job. He's going to play to the best of his ability and uplift guys like he always does. But, Jokic is such a unique player that I think that it's easy to say that any player can coach talent, but it's not always how you respond to that talent, how you connect with that is an important part of this. And I think that, this could be something that ends up being maybe why, if they get it wrong, could be the thing that really does break this apart for the Nuggets.
The way I would put it is Michael Malone and Nikola Jokic are not similar basketball minds. Like, this is not like, that was not a natural fit. But the point is that sometimes you can have contrasting, not opposite, just contrasting styles and have them bring together to create something really good. Michael Malone is fiery. He's a hothead. Like, he is furious when they lose. He is devastated when they lose. Nikola Jokic is mostly like, yeah, that's part of basketball. You win, you lose, it happens. And that style and that differential, and Jokic wants to play the beautiful game and always make the right read. And Malone built a system with the help of guys like Chris Fleming and Chris Finch, actually, who was a member of the Denver Nuggets and on the assistant coaching staff. Through all these assistants, they built a system that helped them win an NBA title with Jokic and turn him into the best player of all time. Like, he was going to get, or not player of all time, best Nuggets player of all time. So Jokic is obviously like the go point of this, but there's been this idea that Malone is a Jokic merchant, and like, he may struggle in his next stop. I wouldn't be surprised. I've seen Stan Van Gundy struggle. I've seen a lot of good coaches have trouble in their next stop because it takes the combination of player and coach to really make it work. That's why LeBron, I think, is so insanely incredible, is like Mike Brown, Eric Spoelstra, Ty Lue, Frank Vogel. He's had success with all sorts of different coaches. But it usually takes a pretty special combination of guys, and I think that they're going to miss that. It's possible to get a better basketball mind from an X's and O's standpoint that all the fans can rave about. Look at this scheme and look at these APOs. But I'll tell you, being the head coach of a basketball team means building relationships and managing them first and foremost. And Malone was excellent at that. For 10 years, he got the best buy-in you could find in the league. They were always great on back-to-backs. They were always great when they were down players. They won consistently, and they're going to miss that no matter who they go to next.
All right, coming up on Locked On NBA, I want to turn our attention to what's next for the Denver Nuggets as the lead assistant, David Adelman, steps in to lead a team that is going to be in the postseason somewhere. We don't know, play in, play off. We'll figure that out as we wrap up these last couple of games. But I'll ask a few questions about that coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health is just as important as taking care of your physical health. But traditional in-person therapy can be expensive, often ranging from $100 to $250 per session. Sometimes that makes it inaccessible. But that's where BetterHelp comes in. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense, saving you time and money. Therapy isn't just for life's toughest moments. It can help with everyday stress, learning how to set boundaries, developing positive coping skills, having access to support when you need it. It can make all the difference in the world. Your well-being, it's worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. So lead assistant David Adelman, he steps in. How does this impact what the Nuggets can do in the postseason in your mind, Matt? Is there any strategy change, or were David and Mike were they aligned strategically and it's steady as she goes?
So David Adelman's in charge of the offense in Denver. Ryan Saunders is in charge of the defense. I'm not surprised that David Adelman has been retained. I am surprised there have been no other changes to the coaching staff. Adelman has done very well, and I will say, like, every single player speaks glowingly of Adelman. Adelman was going to be a hot commodity on the coaching market and will be, regardless of how this goes. The Portland Trailblazers in particular is a team that, like, everybody in the league knows is looking at David Adelman should they decide to move on from Chauncey Billups. #if. So I would say that, like, I think the offense is going to keep going at a high clip. I think you're not going to see like dramatic changes, I don't think, to the offense other than maybe some rotation changes. One thing will be interesting is if David Adelman can get through to Jokic, that he needs to stagger with the second unit. They badly need to play Jokic until the 4-minute mark of the first quarter, sub him, bring him back for the second quarter for the 4 minutes, sub him, and then bring him back to close the final 4 minutes. That's what they need to do in order to stabilize that bench unit. Jokic has not wanted to do that, and Malone hasn't pushed him on it. Defensively is my question. There have been issues with the Nuggets in terms of, like, do not feel there is a simplified good system of defensive scheme coverage for them. They have a base scheme, but it's the details that they're trying to understand. That to me is the biggest question, is will there be changes in the defensive scheme under David Adelman to try and spark something with this team to play better? Because they need to start playing better right now is when they have to start playing extremely better.
Haize, is that confusing to you that they would essentially elevate the offensive coordinator, for lack of a better term, instead of the defensive coordinator, when everyone has just been sounding the alarms on the Nuggets' defensive struggles?
No, because as Matt said in our earlier episode today, I don't think there's anything you can really do for the Nuggets to play that much better defense. They just don't have the personnel to play much better defense than what they do. So why not double down on at least what you do well, not change a lot there. So no, it's not surprising that you don't bring up the defensive guy, because the Nuggets defense is what it is. And I think, especially going to the playoffs, you want everybody to be comfortable. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Everybody's going to keep their same roles and basically do what they're going to do. The Nuggets season is going to continue on. They weren't going to go that far, maybe not anyway. So, we'll see what the future holds for them, but it's not surprising to me.
Yeah, Matt, you mentioned that David Adelman is going to be a hot commodity, has been in the past. Like, do you think that part of this was, let's see what this guy can do, and hopefully if it goes well, I don't know how you would define that, but if it goes well, that it would put them in a little bit of a lead seat to retain him?
So there's Josh Kroenke, who's governor of the Nuggets and is involved in the day-to-day, and there's his father, Stan Kroenke. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that those answers. So who comes out of this with the choice is going to be very interesting to me. I think Stan's probably going to want to go for an older coach that he knows, that he's familiar with, who has a championship record. I think Josh is much more built on process and could go for an assistant like Adelman, or maybe another assistant that he really believes in. Their approaches are not like Josh and his dad are in lockstep because, well, Stan Kroenke has the money. And so those decisions are in lockstep, but I'm going to be very interested to see how that process plays out, and how much more power Josh Kroenke is kind of taking over here as his father gets older in terms of these decision-making processes. So I'm very interested to see that. The other thing I would tell you, it's going to depend on the price. The Nuggets are willing to pay for players. They've always been willing to pay the tax for contending teams. Coaches, front office, and other resources is another matter. That's where they save money. So that's going to be a part of this equation as well.
An older, experienced coach. I did just read that after the Malone firing, Tom Thibodeau becomes the fourth sort of longest experienced coach in the NBA currently as head coach. I wonder if he would coach for a discount if they promised him that he could play Nikola Jokic every single minute of every single game.
And Jokic would just be like, sure, I feel good, right? Brother. That's all he'd say.
Right.
I feel good, brother.
Haize, so staying sort of on this topic of looking for an experienced coach to bring into a smaller market to find some success, I mentioned Mike Budenholzer. He wins a championship with Milwaukee. Matt brought up a good point that sort of different ways they were approaching the post-championship eras of those teams. But Mike Budenholzer wins the championship, gets ejected into the Suns. Now Malone, same thing after winning in 2023. If you are an experienced head coach, do you think you should be thinking twice before you go and help a small to mid-sized market with no championship pedigree for fear that something like this is going to happen?
You can't fear that. I mean, that's just the nature of the league. I don't know if it's going to be any different. If you heck, the big market teams will fire you. Like they suffered through 2 losing seasons with Mike Malone. I don't know if some of the bigger market teams would even do that. So you run that risk there. So it's just the nature of the business where we are right now. It's a result-based business, and things can shift quickly, very quickly in the NBA. And all it takes is for an ownership group, a governor, whoever it is, to wake up one day and realize that they want to go a different direction, and then your job's on the line. So I don't think you can fear going to a small market team. You just got to be good at what you do, be a good coach, develop, do the best that you can, and trust that it's going to work out. And if it doesn't, there are other jobs out. Mike Malone could have another job as soon as this offseason if he wanted to. And I think that's going to be the thing there. So you can't worry about that. You just got to be the best at what you do.
Darvin Ham made the Western Conference Finals and was fired a year later. Like, this is like how it goes, man. And look, I understand Lakers fans think that was the right move, and it looks like the right move. JJ's amazing, I think. But that's just how this goes. And I think I said this on another show that the CBA to me is such a big component of this because you have less flexibility. So you have fewer opportunities to be like, all right, this isn't working. Let's try a trade to kind of shake things up. Oh, well, we got to give it time. There's none of that anymore. Like, it's so much harder. And so like you fire the coach because that's what you can do. Like, that's what you can do. The Nuggets under the previous CBA, they make a trade at the deadline, but they couldn't because of how the new CBA is in terms of the options that are available. The only thing I could say is like, you could get fired in a big market, small market, anywhere. You just got to get as much money up front as possible. That is the entire thing, is like get as many years guaranteed as possible. Rebuilding team, championship contending. Like, the Suns could be through their third coach in 3 years.
Yeah.
That no one paying all of them.
No one is, I will say this too, no one is safe in the player empowerment era.
And do you feel, but this wasn't necessarily player empowerment, right? This felt like ownership empowerment, saying we're going to take control of what we can take control.
This wasn't, but I will tell you that like a lot of it's like, you got to keep Yoke happy. Yep. Like you got to keep Yoke happy because you do worry about Nikola, that tweet that comes through that I will not get the text message on. That will be Nikola Jokic has requested a trade. Like you're trying to avoid that. You're trying to do everything possible to change that, unless you're Nico Harrison.
Yeah, you're trying to go into the Kroenke's phones and change the contact for Rob Pelinka. I think that's the best plan. All right. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Thanks so much for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Maybe you listen twice in one day, like today. All right, I'm going to say it again. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. We'll see you right back here tomorrow to break this down even more on Locked On NBA.